This
And
conference will now be recorded.
so I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. It's Friday, October 23rd, 2020, and I'm very happy to have joining me today Chris Ferreira as my guest presenter. And today, our topic is the various choices that people have when planning ahead for long-term care as well as for retirement. So we are all multidimensional. I think everybody will agree on that. We might initially say, I have a financial question or I have a legal issue, but really we are multidimensional, and it's important that all the different aspects of our future planning be coordinated so that we have a balanced picture. If something is out of balance, it's going to affect everything else that we're going to do. So it's very important that we work with a team of professionals, because when we work with a team, everybody contributes their area of expertise and their experience to help benefit you so that you can make informed, educated decisions for yourself, your partner, your spouse, or your family. So one aspect is the aspect that I deal with as an elder law attorney, and that's the legal part of our lives. It's equally important that we coordinate the financial aspect of a plan. And that may mean we need a financial advisor as well as an insurance specialist. They each bring something unique to the table. And let's not forget that we have medical issues and needs, we have social issues and needs, and so another very dynamic role that needs to be part of the team could be a life care manager to help us navigate through health issues, navigate through the healthcare system. And we certainly will need a healthcare advocate, somebody who's going to help us make the best medical decisions. And if we are incapacitated, they are going to help, or they may actually be our surrogate making the decisions for us. So today we're going to start with an understanding of what does it take when we're ready to create our future legal plan. How do you begin? And sometimes this can be either overwhelming or people just don't know, where do I start? So I'd like to start with some recommendations before you schedule a consultation. And the first is you want to organize your financial documentation. Now, if you already have a financial professional like Jeff from SunTrust that you're working with, this will probably make the first step much easier for you, because they can help you organize what do you have in place, your investments, your retirement planning assets, whether they be IRAs, 401ks, SEPs, cafeteria plans, and it makes transmitting the information to the attorney that much easier. My second recommendation is you do want to make sure that your personal and private information is safeguarded. There is a lot of fraud going on these days, both within the US and outside the US. So transmitting information in a safe way is very important. Another aspect of that has to do with what we call digital assets. Now, digital assets can include things such as our travel and our hotel mileage and points, things that have a value to them. Digital assets also refers to our online usernames and passwords that we might have for accounts, for social media. The reason I say this is so important and we don't want to overlook it is it's very easy, and I see this unfortunately more often than I would like, for people to not have this in organized fashion, so that if they become sick or incapacitated, either their next of kin or the person they've designated in a durable power of attorney can know where's the information kept, how do I access it, so I can continue to make necessary financial decisions for this person. So if we don't have it in an organized fashion and we don't communicate to our trusted fiduciary where it's located, it's going to be problematic when they need to access it. And I will tell you, unfortunately, I lost a very good friend in May, a very young woman, and unfortunately, she did not give anybody, much less her fiduciaries, the username and passwords to her laptops. And that's where she chose to keep the information about her digital assets. This caused quite a delay and became problematic. So I always like to use real life examples because it gives everybody else the opportunity to learn from those mistakes and do it right, do it better for yourself. The third suggestion is that before you meet with an attorney, start to think about who you would like to name in your legal plan as the fiduciaries. Now, what is a fiduciary? It simply means it is a trusted person that you are going to delegate certain responsibilities to, whether it be you're alive and you're incapacitated or at the time that you pass on. Fiduciaries fall into two categories. There are financial fiduciaries and there are medical fiduciaries. So a financial fiduciary could be the person you're going to name in a durable power of attorney. It could be the person you name as a successor trustee in your trust agreement, or it could be the personal representative you designate in your last will and testament. An example of a medical fiduciary would be what we call the surrogate, the healthcare decision maker you're going to name in a designation of healthcare surrogate, somebody who will stand in your shoes when you're incapacitated and have permission to speak with all different types of medical professionals that could be treating or counseling with you. My fourth suggestion, and this is probably the most important one, is please take the time to talk with the people you are thinking of naming as your fiduciaries. Why is this so important? Well, if you think about when you open a present on your birthday or Christmas or Hanukkah, you're excited. You can't wait to see what's inside. It's a fun type of surprise. But when you don't talk to the people that you're thinking of naming as a fiduciary and you simply instruct the attorney to write their name in your documents, it's not necessarily the surprise that most people like to get. It's important to have that open dialogue beforehand and actually invite them to be honest with you and tell you whether or not they would be willing to take on the responsibility. By having the open dialogue, we know when we write the documents that this person is willing to serve and that they're being selected for a position that they are best suited for. So you don't want to name somebody as a medical fiduciary if making medical decisions is uncomfortable for them, or they tend not to stay calm during times that really require a clear head and a calm approach. So I want to encourage everybody to take these steps as part of the beginning process of creating your future legal plan. Now, equally important is taking time to identify what are your goals? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And what is the legacy that you would like to leave when you take your final breath? And I'll work with you And together, we'll identify the order of the priorities of your goals to make sure that we can create a plan to meet the most important goals you've identified. Some goals might include understanding your residential options and doing proper financial planning to have the option to choose where you're going to be receiving your care. It might also include doing proper estate tax planning to reduce or eliminate potential estate taxes. And it might also include gifting to families and charities to further charitable goals. So the key and the whole purpose behind today's webinar is to become educated and become informed. So there are two parts to creating a legal plan. Most people only think that it's one goal, which is passing on assets at the time of their demise. But we're actually going to talk about the first part of the planning, which is create a management plan for when we become sick or incapacitated. And as much as all of us may say, but wait a second, I take great care of myself, I eat right, I exercise, things can happen over which we have no control and we can't foresee. So having a management plan, a system of people, of fiduciaries that will be able to continue financial and medical decision making for us is so important. And even more so now as we are living through a historical time of the COVID-19 virus. So the first document to think about from a financial perspective is the durable power of attorney. This is extremely important because it is the legal way to delegate permission to another adult to make financial decisions for us. And you'd be surprised to learn that if you're married or you're in a long-term relationship, that relationship by itself doesn't give the other person, spouse or partner, the ability to make your medical or financial decisions when you're incapacitated. Being married alone does not confer that privilege. It has to be done in writing and in a way that is legally recognized. Now, I do want to point out one of the important advantages of the durable power of attorney, and that is it does not make your fiduciary an owner of your assets. So this is unlike adding somebody's name on as a joint owner to an account. Here's why it is so important. What would happen if you had somebody's name on as a joint owner to an asset and unsuspectingly they become divorced? They have to file for bankruptcy. They cause a car accident and they are sued above their policy limits. Well, I'll share with you what the unfortunate result is going to be under any of those events. Should they occur, divorce, bankruptcy, lawsuit, half of your account that their name is on is going to be available to satisfy whatever ruling is made in the divorce, the bankruptcy, or the lawsuit. Now, it makes no difference that the joint owner never contributed to the account legally. Their name is on the account, so they have equal right, as do you, to the monies. Whereas with the durable power of attorney, they are not an owner. They are strictly a fiduciary that is charged with the responsibility of overseeing the monies and making financial decisions that are in your best interest. So I hope that you take that little tidbit with you today. Also, as part of a financial plan, you might want to consider a revocable trust. This is another great tool to have in your legal toolbox because it will allow you to achieve two goals. First, it allows you to create that management plan we're talking about during incapacity because you name another person that you trust as trustee to handle your financial matters when you're incapacitated. The second purpose it serves, and we'll talk about this in just a little bit, is it allows you to indicate who your beneficiaries will be, the people that are going to inherit when you pass on. So that's a great tool because it allows you to serve two very important goals. Now, with a management plan, we have to remember to think about the other side of our lives, which is the medical, the care side. So there are three important documents that you should consider as part of your legal plan. The first, as you heard me mention, is the designation of healthcare surrogate. And as I said before, simply being married or in a long-term relationship doesn't give that other person the right to make medical decisions for you. And think about that, we are living in a time when there are blended families, and there may be adult children from a former marriage, a former relationship, in addition to the current spouse. So having the designation is important because it clarifies who you want to make medical decisions when you're unable to speak or communicate or understand what the doctor is telling you are choices for treatment. And it is legally enforceable, so while there may be other people not named as your surrogate who attempt to be involved, the doctors and the hospitals know that they are relying on the document, and that is the person or the people that have your permission to make the medical choices. Again, it's so important that you have the dialogue before you have the document prepared and signed. Please talk to the people that you're thinking of naming, and also consider naming alternates. Having an alternate named means that the plan does not fall apart if the fiduciary you name should unexpectedly get sick or pass before you, or for some other reason be in a position where they can no longer take on the responsibility. So having alternates named means the plan works. It does not fall apart. Two other important legal documents, we call these medical advance directives, are the living will and the do not resuscitate order. Now, many people will ask, well, do I need a living will if I have a designation of healthcare surrogate? And the answer is yes. They serve two very different purposes. The designation is what names the individual you're giving legal permission to, whereas the living will is a document that allows you to express your preferences for end-of-life care should you be diagnosed with a terminal illness, or you're in a persistent vegetative state, like Terry Schiavo was many years ago in Tampa, Florida, or you are in an end-stage condition of a disease process, which today is being defined by the medical professional as the end stage of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or dementia or Lewy body disease. So under those circumstances, the benefit of having a living will is that when you may not be able to express your preferences, they've already been put in writing, and your surrogate then knows what decisions you want them to make and carry out. The do not resuscitate order is slightly different than the living will. This is a state document, so it is not a document that an attorney creates. It is an existing document prepared by the Department of Health, and it must be signed by both the individual as well as by the physician. When both signatures are on the document, it means that if the individual were to stop either breathing or heartbeat, the two primary vital functions of the body, then the medical professionals will not resuscitate. So what is the difference, practically speaking, between the living will and the do not resuscitate order? Well, let me give you an example. Let's say you are at home and you either stopped breathing or the heartbeat stopped. And somebody who is with you reacts by calling 911, and the ambulance comes to the home. They are trained to very quickly look around and see, is there a do not resuscitate order nearby? Now, how would they know this? Well, they know because the state law requires a do not resuscitate order to be printed on yellow paper so that it stands out from other legal documents that may be, and most likely are going to be, on a white colored paper. Once they find that do not resuscitate order, they check to see that it contains the patient's signature and the treating physician's signature. And if it does, then they will not resuscitate the individual. However, should they not find a do not resuscitate order, their legal instruction is they must resuscitate, get the person in the ambulance, and get them to the nearest receiving emergency room. Now, the second part of the legal plan, as I alluded to before, is the estate planning aspect of the plan. So this allows you to choose the fiduciary, the personal representative named in the last will and testament. It allows you to choose the fiduciary we call the successor trustee on your revocable trust. And it allows you to select who your beneficiaries are. Are they individuals? Are they charities? With the individuals, do any of these people have special needs, physical, mental, or cognitive disabilities? Do they perhaps have any addictions? Or might you have a beneficiary that is just fiscally irresponsible? If any of those situations exist, then we want to explore creating trusts for those beneficiaries that are tailored to protect them and make sure that the inheritance is not frivolously spent. So somebody who has a disability might be on government benefits. We would explore a special needs trust. For somebody who has an addiction, we would explore a different type of trust to make sure that the monies are not squandered. And perhaps if the trustee suspects that the beneficiary is using again, they can turn off the spigot, meaning they don't have to issue distributions to the beneficiary, and rather they can use the monies to pay for treatment and encourage the beneficiary to accept help. We would consider a different type of trust if the beneficiary is financially irresponsible. You might want to set different time frames or ages at which distribution would be made, with the goal in mind being that the older somebody gets, the more mature they become, the more life experience they have gathered, and hopefully will make good use of the inheritance that they are receiving. Now, a legal plan and a financial plan also need to consider your lifestyle. So I refer to this as a lifestyle plan. And to determine how you're going to achieve the lifestyle you want or you are accustomed to, it's important to understand some of the limitations in the healthcare system, such as Medicare. It's important to understand what it is, what it was designed for, as well as what it will not cover. Now, Medicare came about in the mid to late 50s. And if you think back to that time frame, most people in the United States did not have long life expectancies. People usually passed either in their 50s or their 60s. It was only as time went on and we had better health care being provided, people were seeing the importance of eating better, making good nutritional choices, and the importance of exercise, did we start to see life expectancies increasing. But Medicare didn't get created with that in mind. So the Medicare system is designed for what we would refer to as short-term illnesses, not long-term illnesses. which means that one of the most important components of the Medicare reimbursement system covers when we go into a hospital. Now, it's not going to cover the full cost, and there is also a limit on the number of days, although there is what we call a lifetime reserve. But once we've used up that lifetime reserve, it is not filled up again. The bucket is empty, and there will be no more coverage for hospitalization. Medicare will also cover a certain number of home health care visits. And believe it or not, when we come out of a hospital and we come home, and let's say we need a physical therapist, we need an occupational therapist, maybe we even need speech therapy. When each of those therapists come to the house to provide those services to us, it's not one visit, it's actually 3 separate visits. So again, we see that there are limitations built in to the Medicare system. It is not an infinite place to cover our financial medical needs. The same applies with various therapies we will need. Now, what's very important to understand is Medicare is not designed to pay for care we might get in an independent living community, an assisted living community, or a skilled nursing facility. Medicare will only cover a maximum of 100 days spent in rehab, and they will only pay 100% of that cost for the first 20 days. From day 21 through day 100, Medicare is going to reimburse 80%, and the remaining 20% is either the personal responsibility of the patient, or if they have what is called a Medicare supplement policy, then that policy may help to pay for all or a portion of the 20% copay. So the importance here is there are financial limits, and we have to be proactive to plan ahead. So we need to ask ourselves, what options exist? How can I plan ahead to have the lifestyle I would like to have? And here's where we're going to bridge into the discussion of long-term care insurance and the very important role that it plays for all of us. So I'd like to welcome my co-presenter, Chris Ferreira.
Stephanie, thank you so much. Thank you for making me part of this conversation. Jeff, Sasha, Artie, thank you as well for including me in this. And thank you all for participating on the call. I think if you're here, you've already taken the first step, right? It's obviously a topic that's been on your mind, and you probably had discussions with your family about what is the plan. And as Stephanie mentioned, the biggest mistake that sometimes, or that I see our clients making, is waiting too long, right? The cost of insurance continues to increase as you get older, and it's the same thing with long-term care costs. So what I like to do is really concentrate my conversation on the topic of private insurance. But before we get started, I do have to disclose that this presentation is for educational purposes only. It doesn't replace any legal or tax advice. Stephanie, do I have access to the screen, Stephanie, or are you? Okay, there you go. So, when we look at the private insurance for long-term care, there's really 4 options that consumers have today when planning for long-term care. I'm going to focus on the 2 most commonly used today, and then I'll kind of mention the other 2 briefly. If you have long-term care insurance, or if you've experienced someone who's needed long-term care, they most likely had what we call a traditional product. And what I mean by that is that we refer to them as use them or lose them products, meaning that you're going to pay a premium all your life. If you ever need the benefit, you're bought a benefit, but if you don't, all those premiums that you paid during your lifetime are going to disappear. No one really gets a benefit other than you, the insured, if you need long-term care at some point down the road. Also, those premiums are not guaranteed. That's another big issue with this product. And what we've seen in the past, and I just had a client earlier this week who purchased a contract 20 years ago, and what has happened is they've been hit with premium increases several times already and are getting, will continue to see premium increases during the remainder of the time they have this product. So something that appears to be very inexpensive at first can be very expensive as you get older at a time where you're most unlikely to need the product. So keep that in mind. Um, a lot of these products do have a lot of limitations. They don't cover home health care, especially the older products that were issued, 20, 15 years ago. Some of the newer traditional products do offer home health care. They may pay half of the benefits. So, for example, if you purchase a $5,000 benefit, if you choose to receive care at home, they may only pay you half of that benefit or 2,500. It doesn't mean you lose the other 2,500. What it means is that you extend the period of the product. But something to keep in mind. Also, one thing that is very key with this product is that the majority are reimbursement. When we look at the long-term care market, there are two types of benefits. Reimbursement, which is about 80% of the products out there, and indemnity. Reimbursement means that once you activate the benefit, you have to pay out of pocket, you collect the receipts, and then you submit them to the carrier for reimbursement. Nothing wrong with that. It's just, more steps that are involved. You're also subject to the carrier maybe not approving all of your claims. So that could, represent a problem down the road. There are features where you can link these products to the provider. So if you're in a nursing home, for example, you can link the insurance carrier and the provider so that you don't have to submit a reimbursement every single month, but it'll kind of be automated for you. But it requires some additional steps. And this product only covers formal care. So if you have a reimbursement product, they only cover formal care. That means that if you choose to stay at home, the care that is provided at home needs to come from a registered nurse or some type of health professional. Or obviously, if you go into a nursing home, then it would be covered. Now, when the newer products that are available in the market today are what we call hybrid products. You may hear them referenced as asset-based products. You may hear the term linked benefit products. And what it means is really that they provide options, they provide flexibility for our clients. These products, you will get a benefit regardless. So either if once you buy them, even if you need the benefit, you're going to get that benefit. If you change your mind at some point, you're going to probably get most of your money back or all of your money back without any penalties. Or if obviously you pass away before ever needing the product, then there's going to be a small death benefit that is generated that is left to a loved one. So in that sense, you have more flexibility than you do with, the traditional products. Another big, differentiator is that the premiums are guaranteed. What do I mean by that? Is these products you can buy all at once. You can pay them over a 5-year period, a 10-year period, and in some instances, you can do 15 years, depending on the carrier. So what that means is that you're locking in the premiums. The companies cannot, at some point in the future, increase premiums because, in essence, you're paying them up front. They do include, coverage for home health care. They cover adult daycare, hospice care, assisted living facilities, nursing facilities. So these are these are products that will cover you under any long-term care episode under any facility, and we'll talk a little more about what long-term care is, because I think there's a misconception out there that long-term care is for people that become sick, and that's not really necessarily the case. So we'll go over, the definition of long-term care. I mentioned that there's four options. The other two are, buying life insurance. So a lot of people that have an insurable need are interested in leaving a legacy, can, in essence, buy a life insurance policy and add a long-term care rider. What that means is that if during their lifetime, if they ever become ill or need long-term care, now they can activate part of that debt benefit and use it towards paying for long-term care. The other option is annuities, and this really become more relevant when the person doesn't qualify for any of these other products. If you're not going to qualify for a traditional product or a hybrid product, then an annuity may be the answer. And there's annuities out there that have a long-term care rider as well, where they'll give you 2 times or 3 times your principal in the event that you do need long-term care at some point down the road. So those are basically the four options that we have. One of the highlights with hybrids is that there's no medical underwriting. So that's a key factor. A lot of people don't like to, do medical exams. So hybrid products have an advantage over traditional life insurance in that they don't require a medical exam. They do require a phone interview that is about 45 minutes long, and the interview is designed to test your cognitive. So during this interview, you're given about 10 different words that you have to remember during the conversation. And, the more words you can remember, then easier it is to qualify, pass the test, and qualify for the product. So, moving on, how has COVID affected insurance carriers and underwriting? And, I think we can all agree on this call that it's been an interesting year, right? It's something, COVID has affected all of us in some way or another. And it's no different with insurance carriers. So, it's obviously, affected underwriting. And one of the biggest or, toughest questions that I've been asked every single time I talk to clients is, will my insurance cover me if I become infected with COVID? And the answer is yes. So traditionally, neither life insurance carriers, long-term care carriers include any exclusions for pandemics. But I always do advise my clients to make sure that they check their policy. If you need help with something like that, if you need help reading, your contract and really identifying the type of product that you have, let us know. We're always more than happy to do that. What constitutes long-term care? I mentioned earlier that I think a lot of people don't really know what long-term care is. So the definition of long-term care is not able to perform 2 of 6 activities of daily living, ADLs. Those ADLs include transferring. This means that you're not able to get in your car, drive yourself to the doctor. You're not able to walk without the use of a walker or some other device. Bathing, you're not able to bathe yourself. Clothing, obviously you're not able to dress yourself. Feeding, toileting, or anything that is related to continence, or anything related to cognitive issues. So if you were to start experiencing onsets of Alzheimer's or dementia, then it triggers the benefit right away. So in that event, it's only 1. Any of the other 6 is 2 of the 6. You obviously must meet an elimination period. All carriers, for the most part, have either a 90 or 60-day elimination period. There are a few carriers out there that don't require an elimination period, so they cover you from the first day. But then depending on, again, this is where case design kind of goes into place. It's really depending on what you're trying to accomplish, your specific situation that we're gonna recommend, make recommendations in terms of the specific product and what you should be looking at. Um, let's click on the again. Destiny, there you go. So now, the other questions that I've been asked a lot is, what if I've already, been infected with COVID? Is that going to affect me getting coverage? Well, that depends. A lot of the carriers what we're seeing right now, if you're someone who were exposed to someone that was infected, if you travel outside the country, um, they are instituting, waiting periods. So, they may say, look, we're not going to consider you for the next 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. That's kind of like the standard that I've seen so far. But it's really going to depend on, the age of the individual, if they were already infected with COVID, how severe it was, were they hospitalized, were they on a ventilator, did they have any pre-existing conditions? So those things are all going to play a role in how long you have to wait or whether you're even, qualified for the product at this point or not. Can we click again now, Stephanie? So, one of the things that I would say that I see as a positive as a result of everything that's taken place this year is that if you're familiar with insurance carriers have always lacked technology. They're very old-fashioned, old school. They require a lot of paperwork. They do things the old-fashioned way. With everything that's happened this year, I think carriers have been forced to really implement different processes to, underwrite clients and to, approve clients. So, what we're seeing is that, we're meeting with a lot of people WebEx just like we're doing today. We're doing a lot of WebExes, a lot of phone, calls, but we're also being able to provide information online. So, I don't have to meet with the client now to complete a paper app. We can send you everything online. Once the documents need to get signed, it's all done, via DocuSign. So it's made it in a lot of ways easier for people to apply and get qualified for this product. Um, let's click one more time. So, as I was saying, electronic apps. If you're someone that already has coverage, and you need a policy review, whether it's with life insurance, a lot of our clients that are looking to buy long-term care may have permanent products where they build cash value. They may not need the death benefit, so a lot of the times we're repurposing this product into long-term care. So it's a 1035 exchange. It's not a taxable event. So, something to consider if you're in that role, trying to figure out how you're going to pay for long-term care. Well, there you go. If you have a policy with cash value, we can, review that and see if there's enough value there to be able to transfer into a long-term care policy. And we can help you get that information. We have a back office that will work directly with the carriers to get us the information that we need to help you make those decisions. Another thing that we're seeing, and probably not as often now, just because things are, getting somewhat to normal again. We've seen a lot of openings. So, carriers are, if you're applying with insurance for a long-term care rider, if you're applying for a traditional product, more than likely today you will need to complete a medical exam. We haven't had any issues. The examiners that are doing these things are taking a lot of precautions, using a lot of PPP to make sure that they follow protocols and the CDC guidelines. So we haven't seen that as a problem. I think earlier, 3-4 months ago, what we were seeing is that if we needed a medical exam waived, then they were doing that. And they're still doing it. It just really depends on the amount of insurance that you're buying and different factors that will help you, walk through if you get to the point that you are interested in looking or exploring some of these options. We can click again, Stephanie, just let me see all the bullet points that I have here. So I kind of mentioned that, The review, that we offer is free of charge. If you need help with your existing contracts, we're more than happy to help you with that. One other thing, if you have coverage and you've had some issues paying for premiums, reach out to the carriers. We're seeing a lot of carriers that are making exceptions and extending grace periods for policies just because of the pandemic and everything else that is going on. Another option that you have is maybe you need to restructure your contract. And you can do that by lowering the benefits, lowering the premiums, doing different things to ensure that your product or account or policy doesn't lapse. There are things that you can do, and have a conversation with Jeff. Get me involved, and I'll be more than happy to help you with those things. Another big thing is the lower rates, right? So, we talked about the cost of insurance increasing, day after day. Well, a lot of it is being driven by low interest rates. Low interest rates are not good for carriers. So what we're seeing is a lot of carriers just this year have repriced their products just because, they need to stay viable. COVID didn't help that. I think it expedited a lot of these companies having to, increase their rates. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this in the next couple of years. As long as we're in a low interest rate environment, carriers are going to have to increase their fees. Also, the cost of insurance continues to increase, especially for long-term care. I mean, I remember when I started in this industry, 20 years ago, 23 years ago, the costs then were nothing compared to what they are now. And I think a lot of it is driven by something Stephanie referenced earlier is, life expectancy is a lot higher today than it was, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. People are living longer. 1 of 7 will need long-term care after 65 at some point. So, if you're considering doing something, don't put it off much longer. The longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to be. Right now, if you do it at the right time, we can add inflation riders so that the benefit grows with you. Because, the cost of long-term care is expected to double again in the next 10, 15 years. So it's always a good idea if you're considering private insurance to always have some type of inflation protection to help you with that benefit. And that kind of brings me to the end of my comments. Now, if you guys have any questions on anything that I said, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Everybody is welcome to unmute their microphones, or they can use the chat box feature to ask a question.
Can I just I would like to ask a question for Stephanie, only because this has come up. If you have clients, and Mr. Gruens happens to be on the call today, but if you do have clients that live in either different states or have relocated to different states, how does that impact their legal documents, being if they're in the state of Florida or if they're out of the state of Florida, if they have an incident that the documents would come into play?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it, Jeff. So I'm going to share with you Florida's law, and it is likely that other states have a similar law. And that is when somebody is coming to live in Florida from another state and their documents were prepared elsewhere, as long as those legal documents met the requirements of the state they came from, meaning it's properly signed, it has the correct number of witnesses, if it required a notary, the notary signed off, we will honor them here in Florida. The reality is that in our country, people don't stay in the same state, city, or town anymore. So we have to make it flexible for people that may live in several different states during their lifetime. One of the issues that we do see that can be a difference between the Northeast and the southern part of the country is that here in Florida, we require what is called a self-proving affidavit at the end of a will. Not every state, especially in the Northeast, has that requirement. So I do recommend when people move to Florida from another state that they do sit with either an elder law or an estate planning lawyer to have their plan reviewed to make sure that it will comply with Florida. Better for us to know that we might need to update the will now rather than finding that out after the client passes, because at that point, we have to actually be able to locate one of the witnesses to sign an affidavit in order for the will to be admitted to court.
Thank you. That was a question that came up from a few different clients of ours recently, so I appreciate that.
Catherine, I see you've unmuted your microphone. Do you have a question?
Yes, you were talking about Medicare and what it covers in skilled nursing. And it was my understanding that it's 90 days that they will cover, but is that per year or is that for your lifetime?
There is no 90 days for anything in Medicare. When you go from a hospital stay of 3 days directly to a rehabilitation facility for therapies, the maximum number of days of coverage under Medicare is 100 days.
100 days?
Correct.
Per year?
That is per spell of illness. So if you end up going into the hospital a second time and it's for a different reason, you get another 100 days. But if it's for the same reason within a short period of time, you only get what are your remaining days of the 100-day period.
I see. Per illness.
Per spell of illness, correct.
Thank you. And then I had another question for Christian. Something about you said like reimbursements for the insurance, that if I should die, that some reimbursements would be available to a beneficiary. What does that mean, some?
So what I mean by that is some of the new products, Catherine, offer options for our clients. So that once you buy this product, you buy in a benefit so that if you ever need that, benefit, it's going to pay for costs associated with long-term care. If you never need it, you can, get your money back by either exercising the return of premium option, or if you passed away, you can leave it in the way of a death benefit to someone that you care about. So then, in essence, when you buy this new product, someone is going to get the money. It's either you because you need the benefit, you because you changed your mind at some point, or your beneficiaries because you never used the benefit and you left it in the way of the death benefit. The reimbursement piece comes in terms of the type of benefit that you buy. So you can have a reimbursement benefit or you can have an indemnity benefit. A reimbursement benefit is something where you pay out of pocket, you collect all the receipts, you submit them to the carrier, and then they reimburse you. An indemnity rider is a benefit that once you qualify for it, the company is going to give you a check directly to you for the amount of the benefit that you purchased. So if you have a $5,000 benefit or a $10,000 benefit and you exercise your benefit, now the company is going to write you a check every single month for that amount of benefit. And I think the advantage of having that type of benefit is that you can pay for formal or informal care. And that is huge, right? Because as I said before, long-term care is not only for people that are sick. It may be that you're fine, but you need help, with some basic activities of daily living, right? Like, going to the doctor, or you need someone to cook for you. Well, this policies will cover that. And at that point, you don't need a registered nurse to help you do those things. You can hire a family friend. You can do informal care. So I think that's a huge benefit as you're thinking and planning on how to pay for it.
So once you use that amount, let's say it's 10,000 or whatever,
Mhm.
once you use the 10,000, then you don't have any more coverage.
Well, so let's put it this way. The newer products offer what we call different benefit periods. So you can buy 2 years, you can buy 4 years, you can buy 5 years, 6 years, and 7 years. Some carriers offer 8 years, but typically 6 and 7 are the maximum benefit periods. So, for example, let's say that you bought a $10,000 a month benefit for 6 years. So the company, if you exercise your benefit and you need it, once you get certified by a doctor, they will pay you the $10,000 a month for 6 years.
For 6 years,
Yeah.
6 or 7.
And you can choose the benefit period. That's something that you choose. I recommend between 4 and 6 years with this product. That's usually where you get the most bang for your money, basically. And we look at the average stay in a facility is about 3 years or so. If you stayed home, obviously you can live. You may need it longer. Or if you have a cognitive issue, you could potentially live with it for a very long time.
If I can just, as I know we're coming to the end, but one of the things we would recommend, obviously, with financial planning is it's obviously a balance between what you can afford to insure and what your level of assets are. And we actually, within the Summit View financial plan, can model that, any type of long-term care scenario or cost. So if you said, well, what would happen if it's an individual or even a spouse, to say, well, what if one of us had to go into long-term care for 3 years? How would it impact our financial plan? And then if we had to, replace that money that was spent with another, to cover another one of the members, then we would look at that in that tool. So it's something we can certainly look at for clients, and it's a good exercise because it will really put the numbers of the what ifs into kind of a financial picture. So it kind of brings that whole full circle of having the three pieces of a puzzle, which is where we come into provide that analysis with having the correct documents and the correct type of insurance.
Okay, this is another strange question. What about suicide? Would you still have the reimbursement to whoever the beneficiary is?
Yeah, I mean, so typically there's a contestability period that is 2 years with most insurance products. So they cover suicide after 2 years. If it happened during the first 2 years, they probably wouldn't. But as it relates to long-term care products, because it's really more of a return of premium, then your beneficiary would at least get back the money that you put into the contract.
Great questions.
Okay.
I appreciate everybody who attended today. And we did provide Chris's contact information, but Jeff, would you please take a minute and provide everybody with your phone number at SunTrust?
Yeah, do you want me to put it in the chat or just is that for you?
Go ahead and say it out loud.
Oh, sure. Yeah, my direct line is 954-765-7417. And that will reach anyone on our team, including Arthur Farron or Sasha Lozon.
Thank you very much. And it's been my pleasure to have Jeff and Chris today as our guest presenters. I do want to remind everybody we host monthly educational webinars. You can go to the website, fl-elderlaw.com, to the events calendar page to register. And if you were interested in a topic but you couldn't attend, you're welcome to watch the recording. You'll just go to the resources page and select the webinar you'd like to watch. And on the website, there is a gift certificate you can use, you can share with a friend, as well as a free document checklist so that when you sit down, you can discuss with me what you think your needs are. And if you have a legal plan in place, we'll compare what you have and what you still might need for your plan to be complete. So I wish everybody a very healthy and happy weekend. Stay safe, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.